Louis Bertrand George, a former Minister of Education, Culture and Labor, represented the Micoud South community for nearly 20 years after entering active politics in 1982, never losing a seat. The former student of the Vifort Comprehensive Secondary School, during his tenure as a government minister, made his mark in several areas. This includes the extension of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College to the south and overseeing the establishment of the National Cultural Center along with former Director of Culture Jake Scompton. Prior to succumbing to the illness, Mr. George was confined to his Micoud home after having both legs amputated. Close friend, schoolmate, and longtime political ally Eldred Stevens described him as a very humble yet brutally honest man, whose number one priority was that of the development of his country and people, even if it meant giving up a golden opportunity.
Louis and Sir John had a love-hate relationship, whether we like it or not. But they loved each other. I mean, up to the point when, and I maybe want to take at a point where there was going to be a transition of leadership of our party. The first person that Sir John discussed, I don't know what he did with his family, but from the political standpoint, the first person Sir John called in to discuss about his moving out of the politics and making way was Louis George. And he offered Louis George an opportunity to become political leader of the party and prime minister. Louis George, in his wisdom, young man in his wisdom, would have grabbed at that and run. But he said, no, I needed to improve myself. And this is the humility of the man. He did not grab at becoming political leader and prime minister. He agreed and discussed with Sir John the succession pattern that eventually emerged during this time. And so there was a very, very, very strong relationship and respect for each other between Sir John and Louis George.
Stevens, the UWP representative for Vifort South from 1982 to 1987, also described George as being instrumental, despite illness, in the unexpected but triumphant return of an octogenarian Sir John Compton to active politics in 2006. Mr. Stevens also described the deceased as one who did not take to opposing the then SLP government's policies just for opposing sake, never failing to accept when he believed a policy was in the country's best interest, qualities he believed would have changed the current political climate had he still been in active politics.
In many people's opinion, in recent times, there seemed to have been a bit of instability in the United Workers' Party. Had Mr. George not fallen sick and still remains in politics, what do you think his impact would have been right now in the party?
If Louis had taken, I had a little quarrel with Louis over not taking Sir John's offer of becoming political leader and prime minister at the time. But in his wisdom, he had said, no, I was going to do otherwise. I thought Louis would have been a fantastic leader. I believe deep down within a man who sometimes you don't see on his face what he really is coming out of his heart. But he's a man who meant well. I think the United Workers' Party would have been better off with a Louis George on board. But I must also tell you that persons within the party, whether it be the leadership or otherwise, found time to discuss with Louis George and tap off him some of the experience and advices that he had to offer. And so he was, whilst somehow we felt he was a little marginalized at some point, but I'm saying to you that there were people who constantly discussed the life of our party. I honestly believe if Louis George was alive today, the United Workers' Party would have been the better for it.
One such beneficiary of that advice is current Micoud North MP Dr. Gail Rigobert, who spoke to Choice News Thursday at George's Micoud residence. A neighbor and close family friend, Dr. Rigobert cites her path taken in life can be attributed to a man whom she says placed a high priority on education, also lamenting that St. Lucia continues to be a dead hero society.
We don't have to lose someone each time to recognize the contribution that people make. And I'm sure in the coming days you'll hear lots of wonderful things being said about him. But my comfort and my peace derives from the fact that I had said thank you previously. I recall that as a university student, international relations was not on the priority list. And I came to his house and sat with him and indicated to him that I was interested in pursuing international relations. And given that it was not on the priority list, and that creates all kinds of problems with the lending institutions and receipt of scholarships, etc. And he saw to it that international relations was placed on a priority list. And I sent him a thank you card, and here I am today, years later. All that I am, had he not done that, then who knows how it would have gone. So I'm personally grateful to him for that. And that's what I mean when I say he touched people's lives individually. And yes, one can lay lots of physical infrastructure, but when you shape lives and you touch lives, then that translates over generations.
He was always willing to explore untouched areas, one may say. I recall that he was in the forefront in assisting the Rastafarians to get a normal place in school, because at that time there was controversy regarding whether Rastafarians should be in the public schools and so on. And this is one of the things I remember very much about him. I also remember an occasion where that he shared an experience that he shared with me, rather, where on his way to Maho once he met a young boy rather. He was about 9 at the time, and he stopped him and said, "Mr. George, I want to go to school." And Louis said to him, "Why aren't you in school?" He said, "Well, they aren't sending me to school, but I want to go to school." And he did what was necessary. The young man went into school, and about 2 years later, he wrote the common entrance examination and got a place at St. Mary's College. My information is that he is currently doing very well in the British Army.
A date is yet to be set for Mr. Louis George's official funeral service. Miguel Favre, Choice News Now.